Welcome back to the channel, you guys. In today's video, we are going to talk about recession-proof techniques to acquire the American dream.
Moving to southern Missouri is the best thing I've ever done for my family.
Now, this video is going to be probably the most useful for first-time home buyers. Those of you that are really struggling with the numbers and having it make sense to get into your first home. For those of you that are finding that it is more affordable to rent in some cases than to buy, not necessarily in southern Missouri. I don't think that those analytics are often there, but in most of the country, it is more affordable right now to rent than to buy. But this video is also going to be useful for those of you that maybe aren't first-time home buyers, but are still trying to have numbers make better sense. And definitely for those of you that have that investor spirit and are always looking to turn a liability into an asset. And defining the liabilities to an asset, at least in your traditional investor framework, is pretty easy. It's anything that you can generate income, where previously it was only an expense. However, I would push back on that, because there are ways to create value that don't necessarily create income. And that could be looked at so many different ways, but all sorts of production that aren't necessarily for sale, but are for personal use. When you're producing your own food and raw materials, one could argue that that is priceless. And so that really kind of like baseline conversation of liability to asset becomes a little bit harder to define when you look at other aspects of life. So what I would say is one of the first strategies is the good old-fashioned house hack. And this is definitely what I would be doing if I was a young person. It's what I'm teaching my daughter. She is hopefully never going to be a renter, even in these hard times. I have started to prime her and prepare her at age 13 to get ready to be a homeowner. The first thing in that regard was just getting her on my credit card so she started to have credit history. But regardless, if I was a young person, what I would be doing is looking at securing a property and then figuring out how to generate income through rentals. An easy way to do that is to just get a home that has a finished basement, and then it's pretty much like a duplex, you know? Duplexes, in terms of at least our markets, are hard to find. Not impossible, but hard to find. And so, you know, you can turn anything into a duplex, even up to a fourplex and beyond, if you get creative about pushing doors. In fact, just to talk about creativity, I'm not going to tell you the address because it is a property. I always have a property that I'm kind of like, you know, just really in love with because I see its potential. But this is a large home that I would actually want to split into a fourplex, right? It's got huge basement. It's got 2 kitchens, but it also has a wet bar, which would be, you know, for the basement, easy to divide into 2 living quarters and then put in a kitchenette. Upstairs, the plumbing is perfectly done to add another kitchen. And so I would turn that home, that 2-story home, into a fourplex. And then it already has another pre-existing apartment fully ready to go. And then it has like a shop and like garage space that actually could be converted pretty easily as well. It has horse stalls fully set up for horses. And, you know, being a horse person, I would get horse rent too. From what I've calculated, it would be pretty easy to pull in, you know, at the low end, like $800 just with horses there. So I always look at properties like this, you know, how can I think creatively and outside the box, and really turning, you know, real estate properties into something, like reimagining them, turning them into something that they were not even intended to be. So that's thinking very creatively and pushing a lot of doors, but it could be as basic as renting your basement. I would say, if you rent it on the low side, which if it's a nice downstairs basement, the low side would be $700. I know that some of you are like, oh my gosh, rents are so cheap there. And it is true. You can get like a real dump for like $450 still. I was helping investors, do small studios for like $650. Those have gone up to $675. The full 1 bedrooms are up to like $725, and those are with utilities included. So just to know like kind of your competition and what some people are renting stuff for, but you can still get a small, like teeny tiny, like, almost like a 600 square foot home, tiny home, for like $800, $900. You'll see them maybe $750, but that's pretty rare. Definitely rents have gone up a little bit. So what has attracted people is that in this day and age, you barely, very rarely can you pay the entire mortgage when you house hack. But what I would argue is that, like, if you're just paying a fraction of your mortgage, or even if you're only paying half your mortgage, isn't that significant? And I think that we've gotten to a place too, and I've had to really kind of train my daughter out of it, where we're very spoiled, we're very individualistic, to the point where even though we're immersed in social media all the time, we've actually kind of gained more antisocial behavior in terms of like humanity, like more antisocial, and people have such an aversion to sharing space. And I've really retrained my daughter, and I want to just talk to young people about it, is that, if you can get back into living intimately with people, those were some of the best years of my life. I would find huge, beautiful houses that I didn't want to buy, I just wanted to rent because I didn't know real estate yet. But then I would like craft just this super cool community, and I would pick all the people I wanted to live in it, get some big like 5-6 bedroom home, and then we would create this little communities where we could afford that home. And it was so fun. And imagine if you're doing that and actually able to be, buying a home, securing a home, and paying significantly less in your mortgage. And I guess another strategy similar to renting out, the property for horses would be just finding ways that you can generate income creatively. One of the properties we had a full working shop, and we've done all sorts of different things, sometimes renting the apartment and the shop together, but then also sometimes marketing it just as a shop for like someone who had, a mechanics business or something on the side like that. A lot of people around here rent pasture. A lot of people, do all sorts of different swaps for land leasing and use. And what I would say is, if you're not using it, or if it's not like absolutely critical to your life, consider renting it. And that is another way that you can, turn that liability into an asset. And then the last strategy I want to talk to isn't necessarily about, turning a liability into an asset, but it's more about how you can approach your mortgage more responsibly. So I know a lot of you have come across those videos, and I forget what the strategy is called, but it's when you hyperspeed, especially in those first, 5 years, if you really hyperspeed on paying off your mortgage. It's profound. People are paying off their mortgages 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I mean, it's incredible. And I unfortunately just had to refinance my mortgage. I did not get a good interest rate, but, I just had to do it. I set up my payment with just $100 extra every month. I'm going to do a lot more, but I didn't want to set it up on auto payment and do more than if I had a tight month, I didn't want to do more than I could handle. And I just did $100 more a month on my mortgage. And just doing that, which is like, you almost don't even notice that in your finances, right? $100 more took off 3 years from my 30-year mortgage. And honestly, everyone can do that, but I want to do a lot more. And so it's pretty simple, but like in those, especially those first years, there's all sorts of ways to do it, and they all work pretty effectively. Some people are, taking their payment, adding an extra payment, and then they split that payment up during the month. so that you're kind of like knocking down interest as it accrues. And then every time you make a payment, that interest is recalculated, and that actually can be very significant. Some people are just, the ones that are really hyper speeding is just make like a double payment. Some people are also still breaking that payment up where they make 2 payments, but they do it 2 times in the month. Other people are just doing what I'm doing, where they just pay a very small amount, $100 or $200 extra every month, but then they make balloon payments, $5,000 balloon payments as many times a year as they can. Even if it's just once, it is significant. And those are the strategies to pay down your mortgage. Now, I am sure a lot of you are like, oh, but I just don't have the money to do that. And I want to push back on that because I am a single mother. I get no child support. I have a very high overhead, especially with my real estate business, an extremely high monthly overhead. So there's a lot of pressure to produce, right? And I'm going to be able to do it. And I'm going to be able to juggle it, with all of those pressures. And so I just think that we're capable of so much more. I also want to talk to people that either are young and don't have kids, people who have great family support for raising their kids, or people who have older kids, people who have kids out of the home. There is so much that you can do. It is so easy to pick up another side hustle, or just so many ways to get creative and generate that income. We all can do that. It's just priority. Honestly, it is literally just priority. We still, even with everything we're approaching, and currency is insane and everything is crazy and all over the world, but especially in this country, because I believe we're being targeted specifically because there's power in this country. There is so much that we can do, but we have gotten a little bit soft. We've gotten spoiled. And that's what I would say too, for people that say like, I don't have money to buy precious metals, especially not at these prices. And I would say, could you pick up a side hustle and do that on the side and then put that money towards that? I feel like we all could. And I feel like we all could do it before it gets crazier. This video could help a lot of people. I think a big thing too is to break through all of the down psychologies of the people are like, I'm never gonna own. And especially if you get into the psychology, which is, I'm sorry, like very much the World Economic Forum wants young people to feel so disillusioned and so hopeless that they're not even gonna try to become homeowners. Remember what Klaus Schwab told us, that you will own nothing and you'll like it? I don't think he was joking. I think it's like literally a program being pushed. And just that psychology of young people not even trying anymore is super concerning. And I don't think it is really ever better to rent versus owning. Even if owning is just crippling you financially and everything you have is going towards it, ownership is so much better. Now, what I would say though is people are finally coming up with a term, which is worthless home. And they're not talking about homes that need to be, demoed. They're not talking about homes that have no value. They're talking about homes that nobody wants to buy, that are locked in suburbs where there's no possible production. You're in pretty much a food desert, right? You're totally relying on the system. And in a way, that is a worthless home. So what I'm talking about is not just general home ownership. I'm talking about strategic home ownership. I'm talking about strategic use of your land. I'm talking about strategically turning a liability into an asset while also producing some food. Let's say that you get a renter for that basement and you find someone that is equally as passionate about having a garden or having to steer or whatever it is as you are, and you guys can come together. Maybe you're like, hey, I'll buy the steer, you help me feed them, and then I'll give you, a quarter of this steer, whatever. Come up with some sort of trade. Trade and bartering culture is quintessential to Southern Missouri. I think that psychology is going to be incredibly beneficial in the future and actually right now in the present. Okay, last thing I want to do is talk to young people again. So those of you that do want to buy, that do want a home. And you feel like it's just getting more and more impossible to get there. What I would say is this, is that you might have to absolutely hustle like you've never hustled before to get your finances in line, to pay off some personal debt. You might have to work a side job, all of those things. You might have to get creative and house hack or produce income with that property, which some lenders will also look at that and put that towards your financials. So if you can show them, and especially if you can have like a lease in place, like, hey, I've got a renter for $800 for this space. Often they will calculate that into your income so that you can use that to get approved. Now, what I would say is this, is if we go farther into economic, whatever you want to call it, some people are saying we're in a boom. I disagree. I think that we are in a recession, and I think that there's hard times writing on so many walls. It's splattered around. I just see it everywhere. Okay. Now, there's some of the guys that I really have enjoyed listening to on YouTube that are, real estate buffs. They have so much real estate. They're amazing investors, and they totally disagree with what I'm saying. I just don't think that they're looking at the paradigm the way I am. Like, they're looking at the house of cards as if it has a foundation. Okay, I don't see a foundation there. I see a house of cards. Okay, so that is a quintessential and fundamental difference in how I'm viewing things, because you definitely can look, and you can definitely look at some of the analytics and say, we just have strong markers everywhere. And I get how they're doing it, but there's no foundation. So those numbers are skewed. But what I would say is this, if things move faster and harder into the direction that I think that they are, I think that lending is going to become incredibly challenging. I'm talking about eventually getting to 2008 era analytics in terms of mortgages where they are just freezing them. A new mortgage and any kind of loan product is just incredibly hard to get. So what I would do is I would be very strategic in, getting it while you can, making it work, getting creative, hustling to pay it back and way quicker, and then also turning that liability into an asset. And that is how even a struggling young person who's willing to work hard can still acquire the American dream. Okay, you guys, as always, all my information is in the description. Reach out to me if you want to talk real estate or all sorts of things, Southern Missouri. I love to answer your questions, and we'll talk soon. Okay, bye.